So, over the last couple of years, the EU have put a load of restrictions in for tech companies, and personally, I think most of these are targeted at Apple. And today, what I want to do is I want to give you my two sides of the story here, my 2 cents, as it were. You know, EU side and also Apple side. And first of all, what I want to talk about is USB-C, because I think this is where it all started, personally, in my head. A couple of years ago, the EU decided to make all USB-C cables the main cable that you need to use to charge up your mobile devices. So around this time, we had some sort of early Google Pixel phones, and let's say Samsung, you know, they had like the S10 and things like this, and they were all on USB-C. But Apple, up till very recently, was still on a Lightning end. And what the EU said was that they need to switch to USB-C, because at the end of the day, getting yourself a Lightning cable end, this is costing the consumer, or the average consumer, more money, that they have to buy a special kind of plug that goes into an iPhone or Apple devices, whereas everybody else is just generally using USB-C. And the EU even said that using Lightning cables is becoming electronic waste to have, you know, two types of different cables here. USB-C is newer, and that everybody should switch over to this. Now, personally, what I'm going to say is, what a stupid idea from the EU, in my honest opinion here. They were saying that obviously us buying more Lightning cable ends, this is going to cause more electronic waste, because obviously, you know, you've got to buy one especially for your iPhone, whereas USB-C, well, if everyone's got a USB-C cable, you don't have to buy as many cables. But hello, has anyone got a USB-C cable and actually thrown it away yet? Well, I have. I've thrown away loads of USB-C cables. I've thrown away loads of Lightning cables. And guess what? Ever since, say, the likes of the iPhone 15 Pro Max now, since that's come out with USB-C and all the other iPhones too, obviously I'm using more USB-C cables, and guess what? I'm getting through them quicker. This makes more, I don't know, electronic waste. So really, this hasn't solved a problem at all, in my opinion. I have no justification why the EU said we had to all go to USB-C and not Lightning. Obviously, on the other side of the coin, you know, Lightning is over like 10 years old now. It did need changing, and it probably was going to switch to USB-C eventually from Apple. They would have invented a different kind of adapter maybe altogether. But the main point is that we've been told, you know, by the EU, you have to have USB-C as the main charger here. What I just think is absolutely ridiculous. Don't forget that the EU said this had to be across the whole board of mobile electronics. And a lot of chargers, say laptops, don't even use USB-C for charging. Look at this recently. I recently unboxed here some of those new Surface Pros and Surface laptops. And, you know, the Microsoft Surface, they use their own charger still. But do you see the EU moaning at Microsoft? No, you don't. They want to pick out Apple only, and I think there's a bit of a grudge here that they really hate Apple for having the Lightning cable, but they're not really picking on anybody else. And in fact, even if you go into a store now, yes, some laptops, yep, they are USB-C charged, and they do come with a USB-C charger, but still quite a lot have their own kind of main purpose laptop chargers out there with their own special ends, but you do not see the EU pressing down on them, you know, targeting them as the example that they need to change it. And at the end of the day, like I said, a lot of laptop manufacturers are still making these cables today, and yet the EU are not going after them whatsoever. The other thing about USB-C cables is, take this cable right here. This here is a USB-C cable, what you get with your iPhone now, with an iPhone 15 Pro Max, for example. And this cable, I've looked it up, allows you to go up to 80 watts of charging power. Now, if you were, for example, wanting to charge, say, a MacBook Pro at a higher wattage, you would need a cable that can withstand, say, up to, I don't know, 150 watts, 200 watts, and you'd have to use a special cable for that, or maybe the MagSafe cable you get in the box, or another USB-C to USB-C cable what can withstand 200 watts in it. And guess what, guys? That means then, if you own that cable, and let's say you own one of these cables, a USB-C cable, and obviously this one can only go up to, say, 30 watts, that means you're going to have to own two cables too. So what's the difference here? Again, you're still going to have to own multiple cables, and yet they're just going to be all the same end of USB-C. So again, I really don't understand why EU are putting that kind of pressure on there to go, everybody has to be USB-C USB-C or else, because we're still going to have to buy multiple cables depending on what electronic device you have and how much power it requires to go down that cable too. And don't even get me started on Thunderbolt cables, because at the end of the day they've got a USB-C end but they've got a Thunderbolt chip in them, but obviously you have to buy a special version of a USB-C cable. A Thunderbolt cable looks very similar to USB-C. So really switching to USB-C has done nothing here. It's not really solved any problems at all. You're still going to burn through as many USB-C cables, or maybe a few more now if you're an iPhone 15 owner or iPhone 16 going into the future. So there's still going to be loads of electronic waste. And then also at the same time, you might have to still buy multiple USB-C cables if you've got a device that requires more power to go down it. So again, I really do not get this. The other thing to mention is, what does this mean for the future? Let's say somebody invents, I don't know, USB-D, a USB-D end on the end. And this is quite possible. Let's say it's thinner and things like this. Does this mean that a company cannot release the USB-D cable until the EU gives their say-so, gives them their salute, or, says, yep, that's fine, you can do that? And then what does that mean? Does that mean then that the European Union have to push out to everybody, right, that's it, you've got a year from now to stop using USB-C and you have to switch to USB-D? It's really controlling, and yeah, I just don't get it why the EU are pushing this into motion here. I really do not get it. I can see what they were trying to say. They were trying to make it easier, but it just sounds like that there's been no sort of tech head involved here to actually work out the reason why these cables exist the way they do right now. And really, you're not solving any problems whatsoever. The next one I want to talk about is third-party app stores. Now again, this was mainly targeted at Apple. They believe that, having just the normal Apple App Store on your iPhone, iPad, or on a Mac, this is basically monopolizing Apple, that you have to buy from that App Store. And to be honest, I can see where the EU were going with this. They're making you go, if you want to buy an app, you have to buy it through the App Store, even free. It has to be done via the App Store. But there again, switching my hat again, if you're buying an iPhone, this is what you get with it. You know that you're going to have to get it with that App Store. No one's forcing you to buy an iPhone. At the end of the day, we've had the App Store since the second generation of the iPhone, back in like 2008 or whenever it was. That's when the App Store came about, and most users have come on board since then. So it's, if they introduced the App Store today and put that in place and made you do it, yeah, I'd maybe feel a bit different about it. But the point is, it's been out for donkeys of years. And then the EU come along and go, no, that's it. Apple, you have to offer third-party app stores, or the ability that third-party app stores can be put on iPhones and that you can sideload apps. Apple have turned around and said, well, obviously the reason why we have our app store is to keep things safer. We control what apps are safe, what have viruses and things like that. We stop them coming onto our iOS or onto our Mac OS or iPad OS. EU turned around and said, well, just make iOS safer. Simple as that. Make it safer, and because of that, then you can put third-party app stores on it. And really, Apple were not keen to do it. EU pushed away anyway and went, tough. You're going to have to do this anyway. You're going to have to make iOS safer, and you should have the ability for third-party app stores and to sideload things onto your iPhone. Unfortunately, this is what Apple had to do. Personally though, I do feel like that EU kind of bullied Apple here. And then in the day, I know you're going to say obviously that Android can do this right now, you can sideload, but generally the majority of users out there, I know there's going to be some tech people watching this who go, oh yeah, I sideload, I've got app stores and push stuff, APKs and things like this onto my Android phone all the time. But generally speaking, most people on their Pixels, or even say on their Samsungs or whatever other devices out there, they use the Google Play Store. Most people use that to download their apps. This is where they go to. I think obviously Samsung might be the only slight difference here with their Galaxy Store, because most of their apps are built in, like their notes and kind of gallery, and when there's an update for that, they actually push that through the Galaxy Store. And if you wanted new themes on your phone too, you go to the Galaxy Store. But generally speaking, I'm going to put my my word on this, most people don't go on the Galaxy Store to download brand new apps. They mainly go to the Google Play Store for their apps, or to get everything from there. And it's the same thing with, say, Amazon. Amazon's exactly the same. They have their own app store on their tablets. But yet again, you don't see the EU pressing down on Amazon going, oh, you've got to have the ability to allow a third-party app stores to be installed straight away and things like this. They're not pushing it on there. I know you can sideload them. I know you can put them on there. But the point is, again, for the general user, most people are just going to use the Amazon App Store to get their apps. Just like iPhones, most people are going to use the App Store to get their apps. And again, I just really do not get why the EU are throwing their weight here to push on that we have to have third-party apps here in place, or third-party app stores in place here for Apple. So something else what you might have seen in the media recently is the EU, or the European Union, have decided to fine Apple. And they've decided to fine them 1.8 billion euros, which is just under $2 billion US dollars, as you can see right here. And you might be asking, well, why have they done this? Well, the reason behind it, and again, like I said, I'm on the fence probably with this one, is that they're saying that Apple are now getting a slice of the pie for in-app purchases, and that developers have to increase their prices to actually get more money, and so does Apple from this. Now, I can see what they're saying here. Let's say that something's being sold for $1 as an in-app purchase. Apple are, say, taking away, say, 30-40% of that money, and then about, say, 60-70% of that money actually goes to the developer themselves. And for the developer to actually make more money, they would have to increase their prices a bit more, and then obviously Apple would still take a bit more of the portion of that pie away, and you get the idea here. And that is something I don't probably agree with too much, but there again, having said that, there's two things out of this. One is if you're buying yourself an iPhone, and also if you are a developer, you know what you're getting yourself in for if you're going to go on the App Store. You know that Apple are going to do this. If you buy an iPhone, you get an in-app purchase, you know what you're going to be paying for. The other thing too is that Apple are not actually stopping in-app purchases. They prefer it, and I'll give you that, but you can actually, or a developer can actually create, say, another website, and that you can pay it via that website instead, and then basically that means that any in-app purchases, then obviously that Apple wouldn't actually get them. And this is one thing, again, the EU are not happy about. And to be honest, I can see a bit more where the EU are going on this, but the bit what makes me most miserable about the EU is they're fining Apple this 1.8 billion, and you'd think this 1.8 billion would go to European sort of developers out there, they get their money back. Not at all. It's been no facts, there's been nothing about it apart from that generally that the European Union, EU, are just going to take this money and then just use it for other things. They're not going to give this money back out to developers, they're just going to enhance the EU, as it were. And this again just makes me really angry that they've targeted Apple for this. In fact, I think I've also read something recently that Microsoft is also being targeted for this as well from the EU. EU are just making up these rules, trying to make money, and I'm just not happy about this, especially they're not going to be giving this money back to developers. That's not their intention whatsoever. And I think this is just really miserable. And I think from this, what this is going to start to do is that Apple probably might even increase their prices of their products if the EU are going to keep on stabbing them constantly for fines and things like this. Or the other thing that might happen is what we saw recently again in the press with iOS 18 and iPadOS 18 and Apple Intelligence and macOS Sequoia. Apple have even said, we're not bringing out quite a few of the Apple Intelligence features or that ability of, say, remote onto your iPhone, what I demoed recently on my channel, to the EU. The main reason is it scared Apple. Apple are now scared to bring out these features because they believe that EU will probably come along, stab them for them, get more money out of it for them. And so for this, Apple are just going, okay, if that's going to be the case then, I'm quite afraid now to bring out these features in your country, or in your countries, more like. And, you know, I can see where Apple are coming from. I'd probably feel the same. I'd be nervous that if I'm going to re-stuff into the EU, that what are the EU going to look out for now to stab me for and get money out of me for now? And it's just really, really concerning. So from this, I personally think two things I think in my head. First of all, I believe even though Apple Intelligence and a few other things are not coming to the EU, I believe in the next 12 months, you know, the EU will probably find something else to try to fine Apple for or restrict Apple for, or it will be for electronics, but the main kind of person or the main company they're trying to point at is Apple for it. The other thing is I would love to meet this person at the EU. You know, I'd love to meet these top people who put these regulations in place for technology, because I really don't get some of these reasonings behind this. I think personally in my head, and this is just my own opinion, it feels a bit like bullying in a way. You know, you guys might not feel the same here, but that's my opinion. And we just don't really have full logical answers. Like I gave you with the USB-C cables, I really don't get it. Apart from, you know, they said about the electronic waste, but, you know, I proved the facts there. I would personally, like I said, I would actually get onto a plane and pay myself to go to the EU and meet this person who's putting these rules in place. I would love to sit down and interview them and get answers. And I'm sure you guys would love to know the answers too, because I really don't get what is going on here. But those are my thoughts on this one. And I do worry for other people out there, other technologies like Microsoft now who's been fined, and other ones. Does this mean the EU are going to sort of spread their wings more, that they're going to fire more other technology companies to get their own way? It is a bit of a concern from my point of view here where this is going. And obviously they're using Apple as the main target to begin with. What are your thoughts though on this? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments below. And also on that note as well, guys, it's time to wrap up this video. So yeah, if you have enjoyed watching it, please do press the like button. Also, if you want to hear the latest Apple news, reviews and comparisons, please also make sure you subscribe to this channel and also hit that notification bell too. Until next time, guys, I'll see you really soon. Take care. Bye bye.